Can't believe it.
Oh.
I
So,
my
yeah.
name is Sarah, coming from the Midwest Writing Center. I'm excited today to host our first panel, Write More Light, with um, 4 professional writers, 4 published writers, stars in our community who are going to get real vulnerable and or have a lot of defense mechanisms with which to talk about being rejected. We have in alphabetical order Ryan Collins, Philip Goldfarb, Styrt, Emily Kingery, and Misty Urban. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me today, for being willing to put it all out there. I think this is really, really important to talk about publicly. I think that we get our pride and our egos all confused and mixed up and just like pretend that we only have successes, because social media is all about looking good and not being vulnerable. So I think I've advised you all, but I want each person to go through this answer individually. But how has your rejection? How has your rejection? How has your response to rejection changed over time? We'll start with Emily.
Oh, well, thanks, Sarah. How has my response to rejection changed over time? This is a really good question, and I think that I've only really been submitting for like not very long. Like I started actually doing it seriously like a year and a half or so ago. So for most of like my writing life, I was just so afraid to submit it all. And it was something that I have learned, and I'm getting better all the time at it. I like to think anyway. Is that whatever you can imagine, the reality of a rejection is like nothing compared to like what your mind can do. I build up these little like scenarios in my head of like editorial staff just like laughing at my work and thinking this is garbage and like throwing it away. And that's what rejection has like what I've thought. Like I'm like, why submit anything when they're just gonna tear it up, right? But of course that's not, well, maybe it is what happens, but you never know. That's what happens when you actually get rejected. The reality is just it's so much simpler than that. And so it's been a lot easier for me just to see what it's like, to not be afraid of it as much. I don't have the same kind of anxiety about it that I used to. So that's my answer to that question.
I'm still muted. I love that. Thank you. Misty?
This is good because my response is a bit like Emily's as well. What I've learned about rejection is, it's like dating. When you get it's not you, it's me. And in the first stage, you're like, of course it's me. I'm not beautiful enough. I'm not witty enough. I'm not spontaneous enough. Something's wrong with me. Of course it's me. There's a lot of weeping, as you can imagine. They're still weeping now. But what I've learned over the course of many, 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 many hundreds of rejections over years and years and years, I actually learned recently, I've been sending stuff out since I was 11. So I've had 35 years of encountering rejection, and I have a long string of rejected wisdom to draw on, I guess. But at a certain point, when the craft is there and the craft is there, you're doing good work, you're getting good responses from your readers, you're getting the right feedback, you've got good editors, you've got good eyes. You start to think it really is. This is my son. I told you they'd be coming home from school. Go play. I'll talk to you later. Okay? Okay? I'm rejecting you. Go. Yes, go. Sorry. We had a deal and they broke it. Good. I'll look at it later. Thank you. Okay, sorry about that. Hi, those are my kids, everyone. I have a real life outside of the writing. It's really weird, and they don't always mesh well. Okay, what I've learned about rejection is that if you have a good piece and you're getting rejected, it really isn't you. I've been on the other side where I've been an editor and I rejected enough to know that when people say it doesn't suit our needs at this time, it really is just a matter of taste so much. So, if you are getting a lot of rejections, I guess my advice is think about your craft, get more eyes, take more workshops, have more writer friends look at it. Think about if there is anything about you. And when you're pretty sure that you like the piece, that you feel it has a lot of strengths and a lot of beauties, then you just have to find the person who fits your taste. It really is that simple. I still cry a lot, but who cares? Pity me.
I want to reply, and I'm the moderator. Philip?
So I think my response has changed less than I wish it had changed over time, which is to say it's still extremely stressful to get that rejection, to see something pop up on an email inbox and be like, look, I can just tell from the the little snippet that Google is showing me that this is a rejection. It has not gotten particularly easier. One thing, though, that has changed, and this relates, I think, to some of what Emily was saying, is that I'm sending more stuff out. The pace at which I send things out has accelerated over time. And so it's much less like there's this one thing out there that I am waiting to hear back from. And when I get the response, that is the rejection to the thing I sent out. And now I must go and find another place to send the thing I am sending out. And much more like, oh, which one was this that rejected me this time? Moving on to the next thing. And I think that even though that doesn't necessarily make each individual rejection feel any better, it does make the process feel better, because it's much less of all my eggs were in one basket and now that basket is on the ground covered in egg feeling, and a little more of a just like, oh, hey, that was an egg, but I still have some more in the basket over here. So that's not necessarily a change in how rejection feels, but it's a change in how the sort of whole process of rejection, and in a lot of ways it's more a process of rejection than it's ever a process of acceptance, it has changed for me over time.
I have this terrible image in my head of like just broken eggs everywhere. Which
I
is
may or may not have dropped the groceries last week.
Who hasn't?
yeah. Ryan, obviously same question. No, we lost your audio again. I think we can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you are.
Sorry. I'll try to hold completely still. I would second a lot of what everybody said, particularly Misty, just because when I was fortunate when I first started submitting to be a reader on a literary magazine that was pretty widely distributed and read. And I got to do a lot of that as I was starting to learn more about the process and just getting more serious about my work. So being able to kind of see it from both sides, I think was like really informative, and like that, yeah, it is sort of a matter of trying to find the place that's best for your work, which is a lot of work. It's gotten easier. When I started doing that, like everything was like mostly print submissions. So it was a little bit harder to do that kind of research, but I think that's super worthwhile. The thing I guess that's changed probably most for me is to keep in mind that there are like two separate processes, right? Like there's writing, and then there's the trying to get the writing out. And trying to, and when I think the second one bleeds into the first too much, I think you end up with work that's maybe less satisfying. At least for me, I'm writing for other reasons besides publication, and so yeah, I think like I would agree with what Misty said about, like when you get to a point where you kind of are trusting your craft and you feel like the work is going where you want it to go and doing the things you want to do. It's more just kind of finding the right place for it and sort of like-minded people, and that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of grind and often money anymore, because just submitting your work has gotten a lot more expensive in recent years, which is unfortunate. But yeah, just trying to keep those two processes kind of church and state, if you will, and mostly just trying to focus on the work and finding good homes for things that I feel good about. And I used to submit more than I do now. I haven't been as diligent maybe as I have been at some times in the past, but I'm trying to be a little bit more choosy too, I guess. So and I think that's because I'm more interested in the writing and finding a good place for it, rather than trying to write this thing and send it to 100 places and hope someone likes it. Both effective, but yeah, just trying to keep those things separate.
I'm gonna throw this in because I am here and I can. I definitely worked on publications before ever submitting anything, which definitely made me feel much more like apathetic about being rejected. I was like, man, this piece is awesome, and these people were just tired when they got to it. Uh, but I have a really healthy ego. I'd like to go around again with the next couple of questions. I personally can't remember my first rejection. If anyone here can, I'd love to hear about it. Misty, go for it.
My first rejection was Todd Radke in 7th grade, who said he wouldn't date a girl smarter than him. Where's Todd Radke now, I ask you? So I mentioned I've been sitting stuff out since I was 11. My mom recently gave me this, and she said, you remember that story you sent out to that Crickets magazine back when there was a Crickets magazine? And I said, what? She said, you wrote that story in like 4th or 5th grade, and your teacher thought it was so great, you should send it out. And you did. And I'm like, I had totally forgotten that. It's typed, y'all. So I was in elementary school when we had to type things. We didn't even have a word processor yet. I think we got that maybe in high school. This is my cover letter, July 2nd, 1987. To whom it may concern, I am 11 years old, so I'm playing the personal card right away. I wrote the enclosed story for a reading assignment. My teacher suggested I have it published, and he recommended I send it to your Crickets magazine. I'm so proud of myself for this cover letter. Like, I had the submission stuff down. If for some reason you do not publish my story, please return it to me in the enclosed self-addressed envelope. Thank you very much, Misty Urban. I didn't sign it, I typed it. I did not send the original. I retyped 2 copies. It probably took me a long time, and I'm sure my mom helped me mail it, and Crickets responded. The magazine responded. There's a little beautiful postcard, right? So this is good. Dear, it's typed, right? But they wrote my name. They took that time. Dear Misty, thank you for sending us your story. We enjoyed looking at it, but unfortunately, we cannot accept children's work that does not follow the current contest rules and subjects listed in our Cricket League pages. We hope you are enjoying cricket and look forward to seeing a contest entry from you in the near future. So that's like the first writing contest I lost, and I didn't follow the rules, but I don't remember any of this. And I think what happened was that my mom fielded the rejection and didn't tell me. So here's what happened. The next story I sent out in graduate school got accepted. And then the story I sent out after that got accepted, the first place I sent it. And then a story after that got accepted. And I started to think that I was just the super awesome writer and I was going to be like, I don't know, name, fill in the blank with your favorite awesome writer. So when I got my first rejection, it does not suit the needs at the time. It was devastating. It was such a blow. I didn't have that healthy confidence. I didn't have that, I just didn't know how to field it. And it stopped me for a long time. And when I started trying to market a short story collection, when I started to go submitting to agents and publishers route, and I was getting those rejections, it literally stopped me for years. I got maybe 3 rejections from agents while I was in grad school pursuing my PhD. And you look at that now, you're like, that's peanuts. That's nothing. I sent out a novel and I got maybe some encouraging rejections from agents. But because I hadn't been trained in how to field rejection, I guess, I took it way too personally. I stopped for way too long. Like, okay, I have to go back to my craft. I have to start over. In 4 years, when I was teaching, when I was an assistant professor, I wrote 1 story. I finished 1 story. And in graduate school, I'm writing 3 or 4 stories a semester, right? Like, it really slowed me down. So I think my lesson from my first rejection is that I should have learned early on, to follow the submission rules and read the guidelines. Might have improved my chances. I don't know, certainly might improve yours. But second of all, it's just, you gotta learn to take it. You gotta learn to take it, whether you're carpet bombing, and trying to improve your chances, which I've tried, is a strategy I've tried, or whether you're doing the targeted selection, which takes a lot of work and is a strategy I've tried, probably a good strategy. Um, you just, you have to have your own strategy for dealing with it and moving on.
I think that's, and well, I'm really bummed for little you know, sad grad student Misty.
Sorry.
But also like really impressed because like it's actually awesome. But you were
I
so
don't know.
smart. I wish I could just hug you and tell you that you're being too hard on yourself. Who's next with a memorable first rejection?
I'll go.
Hey.
So I don't really remember my first rejection for a piece of creative work. It honestly might have been fairly recent because it took me a while to transition to sending out creative work because I did my PhD in, Shakespeare studies. And so first stuff I was sending out was nonfiction Shakespeare pieces. And I definitely remember my first rejection from that because it was just a straight up like takedown of everything that I had written in this from the editor of a journal that I very much respected. And so it was a little bit like what Misty was describing there in terms of like hitting a wall and sort of feeling like you couldn't get past it for a bit. But at some point in there, I went back and read through it, was like, I actually disagree with what this person is telling me about the work that I put out there. And while that doesn't mean it's gonna, I don't get to send them back a letter that says, "Dear Renaissance Drama, please note that I have not accepted your rejection of my piece and you will be publishing it." It did mean that I was able to sort of look at that and go, okay, we just have a disagreement. Sort of going back to Misty's point about sort of how to deal with rejection in general, like this was not the right place to have sent this, but I don't think that it's inherently so flawed that I couldn't possibly send it anywhere else. And actually that article is now a chapter in the academic book that I have coming out in 2021. So it did in fact persist into existence. So it's, it was very much a matter of like, okay, first of all, hit the wall, accept that is a rejection and it hurts, but then sort of go, okay, what can I actually do with this? What is my next step from this? What am I doing with this? Because obviously that place isn't doing anything with it now, but it's still, my work that I still have faith in and I still have confidence in.
I keep trying to predict when you guys are going to stop talking so I can come on at a fashionable rate. I'm just going to leave my camera on and stop trying to save face. I love that. I think that's a really, really important thing to, I know I'm the expert here, by the way, as the moderator. That's just really healthy to be like, no, you're right. It wasn't a good fit. And also I think you're a freaking idiot because you're the expert in your work, right? Like you should know when it's done. Ryan, do you have anything to add about a memorable first?
I don't. I can't, like, I don't remember my first rejection at all. Like it, I submitted a couple things like when I was an undergrad when I had no idea what I was doing. And I had something get picked up in Earthwords, which I think is still going at the University of Iowa. It's one of the University of Iowa's undergrad literary journals. So that was cool, but I'd be lying if I said I remembered that, or if I have that issue somewhere. I have no props. I wish I would have brought some props. I feel
Do you want mine?
that was so cool. Yeah, it was just great. No, but like in thinking about this, like, so, I really tried to like remember and think about, I started submitting pretty seriously when I was in grad school. And then just for a lot of different reasons, I moved and started a job and kind of just moved away from the writing thing for a little while, for a couple of years, and then coming back. And all of the big things, the kind of like memorable moments were all like positive, or like the first rejection or the first acceptance I got ever, which is an online journal called Keep Going. Erica Bernheim, who's an awesome poet who's still out there doing that good work. Shout out. Thank you again. That was like 2006 or something. So that was like my first real like grown up big boy pants sort of like acceptance. But like those were the only things I could remember, and it made me think a lot about I'm a sports nerd, and I know a lot of degenerate gamblers as a result. And like gamblers will often, like, I've heard a lot of gamblers say, like, you remember the bad beats, you don't remember the wins so much, but you remember the really bad beats. And I feel like in like thinking about this, it's like for me it's the total opposite. and I guess for a long time submitting didn't cost as much as it does now to like, pay $3 a hit to get a form rejection, 90 whatever % of the time. But like, even now, like it's hard. I remember journals that I've submitted to a lot that I've tried to get into, that I've really tried to send like my best work and really been like, intentional about it and stuff like that. But I guess if that is helpful at all, like in like the hundreds and hundreds of submissions that I've done, like I only remember the good stuff mostly. I don't remember like, oh man, that one really hurt, or like, and for the rejections that I remember, all of them are like ones where I got feedback, and not like what Philip was talking about, which sounds awful. I've never really had that sort of like takedown rejection combo sandwich. That sounds terrible. But like like when you get like, hey, this was close, or we really like this made it to this last round, any kind of personalized thing, because having sent out rejections like that, even a sentence takes extra time. And you don't want to encourage people to send you work whose work you didn't like the first time around, because that's more work that you don't want to do and work you probably don't want to read. So when you get that stuff, like it's, for me, it's like really meaningful. I think for a lot of people, really meaningful. And like, so yeah, like rather than, kind of thinking about that, like worrying about what happens, when you get rejected, like Emily was talking about at the beginning, like for me all the way along, it's kind of been like the positive stuff is what stands out. And that's not necessarily keeping with me in a lot of ways. So like, yeah, thanks for getting me to think about it in that way.
Just a quick point to say, I have never gotten that kind of rejection in a creative work. It has only been for academic publications. So don't, if you're someone watching this who's like, oh God, I'm going to send out a poem and someone's going to actually send back something that says it's awful. Never had that happen.
Yeah.
Gotten nothing or gotten positive things. It's only in the very niche academic publishing that I've ever seen the negative.
Yeah. Same.
Second, that academic reader reviews are soul crushing. I can take 10 agents a day saying, thanks, this isn't for me. And I'm like, you're right. Okay, fine, move along. But when somebody's like, this tiny little bit of information is actually incorrect. And I'm like, no, you're incorrect. Yeah, creative writers are such cuddly bears compared to academics, seriously.
Yes, even you, Ryan.
Emily, did you have anything?
Yeah, I'm kind of like what Ryan was saying. I have a hard time remembering like the exact like truth of like what was the first I don't remember exactly my first rejection or acceptance. But I do tend, like Ryan said, to remember those positive, more personalized things, because they're rarer too, right? And so I think there's kind of something nice about that. And rejections tend to, when you get just a form rejection, it's like they may as well just send you a blank page, right? It's like it's just empty words, it feels like. But I was thinking about this a little bit, and one thing I do remember, this is when I was in grad school, and I had a friend who our professor encouraged her to submit this poem that she had written to this particular journal. And she really didn't want to do it. She was really scared to do it. And I said, well, I'll do it if you do it. All right, just to get her to do it. And so I submitted something. I didn't think I was gonna whatever, this journal is, here's a piece, right? So I got rejected, right? But I don't remember that rejection because I didn't have a lot of anything invested in it. I think she got rejected too, but I remember that as something that I keep thinking about that moment. The more that I teach students and work with students in their writing and try to encourage them, oh, you should submit this, think about this journal, or how about, our university lit mag, right? And so the more I encourage other people to do things, I feel like the more I should also be doing it. And so to me, that's kind of a good, that may not be the true first rejection that I had, but it's been formative, I guess, for me in the way that I think about just kind of being active in the submitting universe, right? Just trying to keep getting things out there, get used to rejection, right? Hope for acceptance, right? But the sense that maybe if you want other people to do good things, they want you to do good things too, right? I mean, other people want to see you do well. Like Misty was saying, everyone in the creative world, we love each other. We're a lot cooler than academics. They're total jerks. So anyway, that's just a story that I remember. I don't know how well it fits the question, but I thought I'd get it in there.
Now I'm trying to talk while muted. That's those were all just really excellent answers. I told myself this, so I didn't like do any submitting for several years. For one thing, like life wouldn't let me. And then my the first day I went out January 1st and was like, I'm submitting today. And I submitted 1,000 things to 1,000 places. And the same day I got an acceptance, which is like not that's not a turnaround that you can ever expect from anyone. And so I just decided from then on that I was amazing after, 5 years since I had submitted anything. I think that's also like find the person that'll give you a 1-day turnaround. So we have an excellent question from the audience, which I think is probably, I want everyone to answer it if you feel capable, but it's in response to something Misty said. How do you know it's a bad match rather than your writing isn't ready to be published? Do you know the difference between the two?
Yeah, that's a good question. To put Ryan on the spot, I think you learn how to become your own internal editor, right? If it comes right back to you boomerang, and I think you said this too, Sarah, it's how you feel about it. The best rejections are when you get a note that says, we really liked this, but it had an unsatisfactory character arc. I'm a fiction writer, and I can say, oh, okay, well, I'll look at the character arc. So that's really super when you get that feedback. I mean, then you know what the problem is and you can go fix it. When you get the does not suit our needs at this time, yeah, that's when you just have to recheck with your own internal instinct and say, you can also look back at the process. Like, did you fall in love with the first draft and send out a first draft and think it's brilliant? Because I've done that, and that piece still hasn't been accepted. But the stuff that you've worked on for a really long time and your readers love and your mom loves, or whoever your most trusted people are, they love it. You take it to a writers group, they give you good feedback. You take it to this group, you get a good feedback. You feel like it's done. You just have that inner instinct. And if that's there, I say that's when you're like, you're a loss, move on, send it around again. In grad school, we would kind of like what Emily was doing, we would sort of encourage each other. We'd have the, who got rejected today? Who got the most rejections this week? And we challenge each other, turn it around that day. You get a rejection in the morning, you send it out again that afternoon. Like, it became do not let this stop you. I wasn't very good at that. I let it stop me. I went back and I've ruined stories that were good because I didn't trust that instinct, but keep developing it. That's kind of the best non-answer I can give. I'm interested to hear what others have to say to that.
I mean, it's often not a popular answer, and it's time consuming and it's work, but all of this is, and I think sometimes we pretend like it's not, and I don't know that that's honest or helpful or useful in any way. But reading, like, there are lists you can see of like literary journals that are taking submissions. Creative Writing Opportunities that Allison Joseph hosts is a really excellent one. Entropy magazine does one every like 3 or 4 months. That's super great. I don't know that there's a comprehensive one out there, but when those come out, if you've got like a pile of work and you're thinking like, man, I want to get some stuff out there, go read the journals that you're thinking about submitting to. Too often, I think that doesn't happen. And there are like several reasons to do that. One, you get a sense of like what their aesthetic is a little bit, or like what they're looking for. Like, I think if you like actually do a little work, like if you look at their about page, if you look at their, not just the submission guidelines, how can I get my work to you, but like, what are we about? What are we interested in? Right? What do we care about? If you don't care about the same things as the journal that you're looking at, move on. Or I mean, like, read the journal, appreciate it, but if it's not a place where you can see your work, like somebody told me that once, if you can't see your work in this journal, it's maybe not the place to send it, and that's cool. There's a lot of journals out there, but it takes work to actually do that, right? You need to like read the about page and their the mission statements and stuff like, and read the work. Like, you want to be someone in a magazine that other people are reading, right? So be the person who's reading the people in the magazine that you eventually want to be in, that you're thinking about submitting to, right? Like, too often that doesn't happen. It's like a one-way street, and I think going back to what I said earlier about having like worked on an editorial staff first, like, and seeing both sides of that equation, like, remember that you're submitting to something that people are putting a lot of time and work into, and like, it's worth you checking it out. If you want them to put in the effort to take your work seriously and consider putting in all the time and effort that it does to bring it to the public under their masthead, like, do the work of seeing like the other work that they've done. Like, it's a little bit of respect. It gives you a better chance, I think. And like, you're a little bit more informed about what they're looking at, but you also know a little something about the magazine. So if you have an opportunity to have a back and forth with those editors, you're not just like, you were open for submissions and I have submissions for you. That's fine. I mean, people do that. Again, there's a lot of different strategies, and I'm not trying to, I too have tried several strategies to varying degrees of success, but I think it's worth the time and effort in terms of knowing where you're submitting and like feeling good that like, hey, this work that I've written seems like it could be a good fit here. And if it's not, like, then there's an editorial process. Maybe you get some feedback. Maybe you revise it and send it back to them. Maybe that's something that they're looking for. Maybe you find another home for it. But like, I feel like that's the best way to give yourself the best chance, and also to like participate in the community that you're trying to be a part of, because that's really what it is. And I think when people don't think about it in those terms, they're doing themselves and their work a disservice.
I feel like there's just no arguing with that. And like having a different perspective wouldn't be an argument, but it would be really hard to say anything after that. Like, do your research. Oh, not bad. Well, I did have something I wanted to say while you were talking, but it's gone. Does anybody else have like a method that you use to give yourself that tip, like I think there's probably a point at which, like, if the same piece gets rejected enough times, you lose your ability to see if it's, if it was done, like you were proud of it in the beginning, and now you're like, I don't know, am I proud? Am I a trash writer? Especially if you've read a piece enough, like it no longer has meaning. But does anybody have any like quick methods when they get rejected to?
So dramatically the opposite of a quick method, but time. If I go back to something that I wrote and got rejected 3 months ago or 6 months ago or a year ago, or let's keep adding time to that ago, it gets easier and easier to see whether there was something wrong with the piece or something wrong with where I tried to send it, or both, or something wrong with the piece but it's fixable, or oh God, why did I think this was publishable? Because the sense of myself as a writer, and also the sense of, as Ryan was saying, of like what places will actually take, because as you also spend that time, you can spend it doing things like reading. That the ability to go, okay, for instance, I write a lot of rhymed poetry, a lot of metered poetry, particularly a lot of sonnets, and I can look at sonnets I wrote a while back and say, oh, this was a really good idea, but I really fumbled it at the couplet at the end. Like, this was just, I really liked it because it was a good idea and the first 12 lines were great, but the last two really undercut it. I can totally see why they didn't accept this, but that's, still an idea I can now just tinker with the couplet, versus somewhere I'll look and go, what were you thinking? And that's just, it's something that, having distance from having written it in the first place and having revised it, and having gotten it rejected, it's the exact opposite of a quick way, but it is just having that time from when you were most invested in it to now is the best way I know to actually be able to tell whether it was the fit or whether it was the piece or both.
And I agree with I have nothing really of value to add beyond everything. I agree with what everybody else is saying here. Like all of it I think is wonderful. And one thing I would add, something that helps me, like if you don't feel like you want to take this who knows how long you want to like sit on a piece, like put it away, and it's like, well, I want to get this published, but I don't know how long I should like put it aside to then go back to it. If time feels like an issue to you and you want to feel like you're still doing something, I think a palate cleanser is helpful. To me, what that means is I just read something very different from anything that I'm working on, usually in a different genre. So if I'm writing a poem, and I'm just like, I just can't like unsee this thing. Like I don't know how to look at it fresh. I don't know what to do with it. I read like fiction or nonfiction or something that has nothing to do with anything that I was writing about in that piece. And then I can go back to it, and that it helps me see it fresh, because it's not still kind of like the language of it isn't still like there in my head. Like it just helps you to kind of have like that kind of contrast. I think sometimes for me that can be helpful, because I say that even though this morning I was just like taking this piece and just like, why did I think this was good? And I'm like trying to like redo everything, and I'm just like, I don't know, this needs to be a brand new piece. And I'm just like, Emily, put it away. Put it away and read something else before you ruin it, right? Because if I thought it was good, there's probably something good there. Maybe it's not ready. Maybe it's not how it's supposed to look ultimately. But don't mess with something if you're in a bad place, like mentally about it or emotionally. For me, it's like emotional. So just read something else, do something else, write in a very different genre, read in a different genre. I think all those things can help you without just kind of sitting back and doing nothing or feeling like you're doing nothing for a long time. So that's maybe the one thing I would add that helps me.
I feel like the advice read widely comes up every single time I ask a writer for advice. And also that's like a writer's block piece of advice that I give too, which is like, do something opposite of what you're what you think you need to be writing. Love that. I'm gonna switch tones a little bit. How do you keep track of your submissions and your rejections? Misty.
I have a spreadsheet of my own that I use. Not everybody does Submittable. And I'm trying to, I don't know, it's possible that in my early days, I sent the same thing to the same place, and it's possible that they rejected me in the exact same manner. I will not confirm or deny. The spreadsheet's really helpful. What I have not done is kept a grand total. So I would have to go back and put all the spreadsheets together to see, you know, how many times my short stories have been rejected and how many times this novel and that novel. But for each of my novels that I've shopped or am shopping, I keep its own spreadsheet. Here's where I sent it to. Every once in a while, I pull it up with and cross-reference, like, did I send somebody else that novel, just to make sure that I'm not double teaming it. Submittable can make me really sad when I look at it. It's like decline, 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 decline. Ooh, in progress from 2 years ago, and I know they don't want it. And then every once in a while, you can click on that acceptance button and just give yourself a little warm fuzzy, like, yeah, there are my acceptances. So, spreadsheet person.
I'm a Word doc or Google Doc, I guess, now, because I decided having a home computer and a work computer was making things too complicated. So I'm a Google Doc girl. I'm in this century, I promise. So I just keep that with like an alphabetical list of like the titles of all my poems. And then beside that, I just give a little shorthand of wherever I'm submitting something. So the name of the journal and the date I submitted it. And then I just have all of those listed. And when I get a rejection, I can just do a find kind of function to see like where, you know, which poems they are. And then I can just do a strike through. So that helps me see like what's out, where have I submitted, how many times have I submitted this particular piece, where has it been, right? Where is it still out? And then it's kind of nice that I just see a bunch of like strike throughs and I'm just like, oh, well, I guess it's time to get it back out there. So it's not floating around anywhere else. And so let's do it again, you know? So that's my imperfect sort of system. And then I put it all in bold once it gets accepted. So I'm like, oh, look at all the bold that I have here. So I don't do a spreadsheet, but I do keep track and submittable of most things. Some places aren't on submittable. So I just have everything kind of replicated in this document. So that's my system.
For those of you who have a digital method, is anyone willing to show us? You can totally say no. Yay, please do. Oh no, we have
Did we lose Ryan's audio again?
Working?
There you are, yeah.
I don't know what's going on. It just keeps going up. Oh yeah, give me 1 sec.
Wind. Let's blame it on wind.
Also, spreadsheet. Also, Yeah. I just use an Excel spreadsheet. I do it by the places that I submit, date, method of submission. Everything's color blocked. That's what everything's red. So, you know, that's oh, except that one. Yeah, I gotta I don't know. Anyway, I keep it pretty color coded. Anytime I get like comments or anything like that, I try to copy those. So I've got a reference for that. And just, you know, if things cost money, yeah, a lot of rejection. I mean, I've had the same spreadsheet for, I think going back to 2015, 2014, something like that. Before I used to do it by hand because I like do a lot of stuff by hand. I write a lot of drafts by hand. But that was just like not feasible. So yeah, that's, I got some things out. That's what they look like. Green means accepted. So yeah, sometimes I'll occasionally kind of scroll through and
What's the blue?
blue is like comments or like withdrawn, like if I had
Gotcha.
a simultaneous submission kind of thing. So if something gets picked up, I try to make a note. So I'm, like you said, not sending people the same thing, making sure that I let people know, because I usually have like, I'll have like a batch of poems that I'll send to like, you know, however many journals, and they might change. So I try to like, you know, have a list of like what I sent to each journal. But if I get like something picked up, it's usually out somewhere else. So I got to let people know. So that's just letting me know that I let people know, because sometimes I'll be like, oh wait, is that, oh no. Yeah, I mean, like submittable, right? I have, you know, obviously have that. A lot of things are through submittable, but not everything is through submittable. So that's why I've just kept it on my spreadsheet. And like, yeah, the submittable is like even a little bit more soul crushing than the spreadsheet. So like, I don't spend a lot of time there thinking about the past. I know what's out, so I don't really check status on there, because I feel like that's one of those, it's like waiting, you know, for, it's like checking your bank balance for money that you know isn't coming. Like, why isn't this going up? Like, why isn't this changing? Like, I'm gonna check it again. Like, you know, it's, so I try. I'm a habitual person, so I try not to cultivate that habit. And just, you know, I hear from people when I hear from people.
I definitely, when Misty was talking about submittable, logged on, and I've got, you know, 50 submissions there and one green one.
Yay for green. Yay for green.
Quite a visual bummer.
Yeah. It ain't easy.
So I'm gonna try to don't know what the S word was gonna be. I'm gonna try to fit in 2 more questions. We're running low on time. First, if anybody has, I think most of you have this. Also, I meant to say out loud, Philip, congratulations on the book you have coming out. What are some differences between rejections and submitting manuscripts versus individual pieces? I think you've all done that, so whoever wants can go.
I haven't had a manuscript published yet. I've gotten a lot of very nice personal, you made it so close, kind of always a bridesmaid sort of sort of things with it. But that's good, right? At least people are liking it. I'm doing the right thing. It's just not working yet. But I think what's hard about that for me is like when it's an individual piece or like batch of pieces that gets rejected, it's like, okay, well, maybe not those pieces. But when you put a lot of work into this whole like manuscript, and it's like, okay, well, which part of it or which thing? If I took out this one poem, would you like it better, right? Or if I changed the order of things, would you would you like it better? It's like you worry more about how the whole thing fits together than if it's just like an individual piece. It's like, oh, well, they just didn't like that one, but I'll send something else, right? But when it's a manuscript, it's like, well, I don't just have a bunch of manuscripts that I can just send out. So I think that it's just a different feeling and the kind of the wondering what you can do better or finding the right fit. I think sometimes like a manuscript takes on its own character in the way that you could have a different style or whatever in different pieces. So I think there's just, I feel like there's more, I'm more comfortable getting like an individual piece rejected because I'm like, well, it's just not the right fit. But if it's a whole manuscript, then it feels like, well, but didn't you like that? Didn't you like this thing? I want to hear more about it. I guess I feel like I don't know. I have feelings, I guess, and I have a lot of them about something that I put a lot of work into assembling. So it just feels different, I guess, for me.
Yeah, I come from a very similar feeling perspective, but I think it drives me in the opposite direction, which is that I have a lot more feelings about the manuscript that I put together, which makes me much more likely to just sort of bounce back and be like, no, this needs to go out to somebody else instead. You know, with an individual piece, I'm always kind of like, okay, maybe it's the fit, maybe it's the piece itself, maybe it's some combination of the two. Maybe that just needs to go back in the drawer for a while and then I'll come back out and I'll revise it. Whereas the manuscript, it's much more like, okay, I've curated this, I've made this work together. This has generally had a fairly long back history behind it. I'm not sort of sitting down and writing a whole manuscript's worth of stuff in a couple sittings. And so it's much more like, I trust that the process I've gone through to make this happen was the right process, and the work that I put into it is the right work. And so that makes me much more likely to say, this was the fit, this was the place. I need to find the right place for it. I need to find the right venue for it, rather than with individual piece where, I'm going to maybe bounce off it and just be like, okay, that was one piece. It just, it didn't find a home. Maybe it won't find a home. Whereas the manuscript, I'm much more likely to just be like, okay, got a rejection on that. It's time to send it out another place right now.
I would second that, and saying that in a manuscript, there's a lot more moving parts within the submission to consider, but also I think there's more at stake in a manuscript submission. If you're submitting a short story collection, chances are it's a literary press that's going to do 1 or 2 titles a year, and you're going to be competing against at least 1,000 other people. And you'll probably have to pay anywhere between $25 to $50 to even have them look at it. So it's a very narrow window. You can do a search, say, if you're me, on journals that might take your short story and then, and come up with maybe 100 if you're lucky. And you might do a search for agents who would take your novel and come up with maybe 30 who look good, who look like they'd be a good fit, because you have to have that fit. It's always fit, right? That magical, absolutely inexplicable word for which there's no formula, no recipe. Nobody's ever going to tell you what the fit is. It's like pornography, when you see it. So novel shopping, you're going with this agent, not a fit, not for me. I just took on something just like this. We can't market this. We're not taking on new authors. All of these reasons, that window just keeps getting narrower and narrower and narrower, and the stakes are bigger and bigger and bigger. So in some ways, I feel like that's the difference between sending out a manuscript. It feels like you're hefting something a lot heavier, a much further distance. And so if it falls short, you feel bad maybe for a little bit longer. But I like Philip's advice: turn around, try again, get it out there. It's good advice.
We lost your audio again. I'm sorry.
I know, we want to hear this too.
Is it working?
Now we are.
Okay.
Hi.
I'm not touching anything. It's so strange. Anyway, yeah, I would second the heavier load, further distance for sure. So like the first book that I got picked up, I got pretty lucky. I got picked up through an open reading period with a press that I had worked with on a chapbook previously. And I only had it out like a couple other places, so it wasn't like a big deal to I didn't spend a lot of money in the contest thing, and kind of what Misty was just talking about with literary presses and independent presses. So it was like, it happened relatively quick in the process of me submitting it. The book that I've been sending out now for a while is a lot more, and it was like a very focused sort of project. The thing that I'm doing now is a lot more amalgamated from everything that I've been submitting and publishing for like the last 12-ish more years. And so it's not like some cohesive project as much. It's more like literally a collection. And I've tried to do the contest thing a little bit more. And it's more of an investment in money for sure. And definitely in time, but they're for poetry manuscripts, I don't know how many other, keeping your eye open for open reading periods that are affordable and stuff like that. There are some places, but that's just, the kind of nature of the thing, unless you have, it seems like unless you have a connect, unless you're on the like the retreat sort of circuit, and you've got those kind of mentors and those kind of access, and people who have their first books come out on things like Knopf and big publishers like that, where there's like, how did that happen exactly? That's there's you go and look, and there's not really a path for that, and it's just sort of things happen. Obviously I can't speak to that, but yeah, it's easier procedurally because it's just like, it's this thing and it's done. And I don't really think about making edits when I get rejection on a manuscript in the same way that I might consider making, like revising, looking back at work. Like I try not to do that anyway too much, like without feedback, because I think you can get really far away from what you're trying to do. But once I hear back from everybody, I look forward to revisiting my manuscript and like doing some heavy editorial lifting and maybe kind of like rethinking some things and getting some more eyes on it and that sort of thing.
My mic works. I just was deciding between a couple things to say. I put this in the comments a moment ago, but I think it might be worth saying aloud, that you need to keep numbers in mind. I think Misty said this, and we probably should have said it at the beginning, like in at least knowing whether or not your faith in your piece is wrong, or if the publication was wrong for you. The odds are never in your favor when you're submitting. So yeah, do you have any advice for folks who are out there submitting and who are getting more anxious by the day about their rejections? Yes, the end. Bye.
Winston Churchill, never give up. Never, never. In my head. Louis Sureya, when he was a keynote at the David R. Collins conference, told a story about how it took 10 years to place his beautiful first novel. 10 years. He's like, just keep coming back. And I wrote that down and I put it's here above my desk. Just keep coming back. Just keep swinging. I had an agent tell me that once, just keep swinging. And I'm like, that's so Finding Nemo. I will do that. Keep swinging.
I love that. One thing that I do, and I don't know if it would work or be helpful for everybody, but it helps me. Anytime I get a rejection, I say, okay, well, now I have to do 2 more submissions. So, and it doesn't have to be those pieces. It doesn't have to be right that minute, but I keep like a total, okay, well, now here's how many more submissions I have to do. So it keeps me wanting to submit, right? Because I think that it can be really like crushing to get rejection sometimes, and you feel like you just want to give up. And so making yourself like, okay, well, now I have a homework assignment, right? Now I have like this thing that I need to do. Well, you want to do it, right? I mean, you want to like meet the goals that you set for yourself, or at least I do anyway. And so, okay, well, now I've got 2 more submissions that I have to do. And so it gives me something new to focus on. I can start looking around at more journals. I can think about other pieces I might submit. So it can be sort of, rather than kind of retreating into my shell, right? It's like it keeps me out in the game, right? Keep swimming, keep swinging, swimming.
Go, whatever your sport.
Sort of bloodily, blatantly practical piece of advice. If you are starting to get concerned about just how much you're submitting and it's not coming back positively, is, I tend to only submit to things that are free. Partly that's just because, given my personal circumstances, I don't feel the need to have as broad of a scattershot, or to, as Ryan was saying, to pick and choose specific places which might turn out to be places that require money. I'm in a sort of privileged position in that regard. But in terms of, the worry and the angst and the anger about it, I found that if I'm not paying them to read it, I feel a lot less, worry and concern about when they're going to get back to me about it, both in terms of it's not as reasonable to have expectations that they're going to turn it around quickly if they're not being compensated by me for doing so, but also in terms of like, I'm not sitting there going, I put X money into having someone read this, and I just want to know if I've gotten rejected yet. That if you can, if you're starting to get very frustrated by sending out a bunch of things and getting them all rejected, it can pare out at least a little bit of that frustration if you maybe pull back and look at trying to submit mostly to places that aren't going to charge you for it, at least until you've gotten to the point where you feel more comfortable once again venturing into those places where they are going to charge you for it.
Yeah, that's real. I would definitely second that. I think too, like, remember there's another side of the process, right? Like everybody, the cliche stuff about how, lonely writer stuff. There's a lot of like writers working on their own, submitting to the same places that you are. And that math, I think, is important to remember, because they're just, every editor of any magazine that you want to be in is reading far more work than they can publish and that they can publish, right? Like they're always reading work that they wish they had more room for, in my experience with most editors, right? It's not, you're not being, there's not a want for good writing out there. There's a lot of amazing work going on right now. This is a really amazing time, particularly for, I think, American poetry. And it's super diverse, and there's all kinds of work, and there's all kinds of journals, but there's a whole lot of people doing it. And just because you're sending out, it's easy to get lost in this window and just kind of like, when am I going to hear about my thing? And it's a community thing, and it's a community of people that are receiving your work. It's a community of people that put the work out. Not everybody is the same kind of actor in that community, of course, but like, I think it's worth keeping in mind, like the scale of the community that you're trying to participate in, and thinking about it as participating in it rather than like, this is for me, people need to put my work out there. Like, I think there's a big difference between the me stuff and thinking like, hey, if I get into this magazine, I'm going to be in the company of a lot of really excellent writers. They're bringing audience, they're doing, all these people are doing the work that you are doing to some extent or another. All these people have lives to contend with. The editors that you're sending to are also probably writers, also have lives that they're contending with, probably doing this on top of their writing and their lives and everything else, right? And I think the more you can kind of keep that in mind, I think it's a healthier mindset to have about it, and you're less sort of like focused on the, why is this happening to me, or why is this not going the way that I want it to? There's so many factors that are out of your control. There's so much math that just makes the whole thing really difficult. And yeah, like the perseverance thing might be cliche, but it's real. Every writer who I respect, who I've ever heard speak on this, it's the number one, read diversely and persevere. Those two pieces of advice I've heard from so many people, said so many different ways, and I think there's a reason for that. So
underline, exclamation point.
Well, our hour is up. I want to say I'm so grateful for each of you for your time and for your insights, and for generally being wonderful people to talk with about both writing and rejection. It's harder, I think, than we led on to talk about rejection. So I appreciate the candor in this room. I personally am grateful to hear from writers I really respect saying like, yeah, no, I don't publish everything I try to. So thank you so much for that, and I hope that the four of you will write more light into your lives. I'm going to switch over to speaker mode and give 2 itty bitty little updates on the Midwest Writing Center. So if y'all need to take off, I understand, it is 2 p.m. But like I said, please write more light into your lives. Now for those waiting to hear what's up at the Midwest Writing Center, next, let me grab my calendar just in case. Next Thursday is going to be our last segment of Write More Light for the summer. We'll come back after the summer. It will be with Victoria No, author of Fag Hags, Divas, and Moms, on women during the AIDS epidemic in the 80s and 90s. So that'll be a really excellent conversation. She's a brilliant woman who has done a lot of work for that community, with women, with queer people. It's going to be a lot of fun learning about nonfiction. I don't think we've had a nonfiction writer on, at least not in full length. We've extended the deadline for the Young Emerging Writers applications until May 29th, which I think is Saturday tomorrow. No, Saturday. Saturday is the day after tomorrow. I know how calendars work. So please send us your writers 15 through 19. In the internship, we learn workshopping and editing and writing skills, and we do a lot of reading, and it's paid. And you end up published in just a gorgeous, gorgeous magazine. And the growth throughout the summer in writing skills and in, I don't know, just all of the wonderful creative ways is amazing. So highly encourage those applications to get to who they need to get to. Send them to us. We want to see them. And then of course the Collins Writers Conference this summer, June 24th through 26th, is going to be really, really amazing. I'm going to start doing little itty bitty promos on the faculty, which includes Tarek Shaw on the novel, Joe Mino on the short story, Gail Marie Thompson on poetry, and Liz Lenz on the personal essay. And then of course our keynote and masterclass with Allison Joseph, which Ryan even referenced her today because she is such an important name in poetry today, right now. So that'll be really, really, really excellent. So yeah, stay current with us, stay up to date on our social medias so that you can see the rest of the stuff that we have coming up. Of course, as always, we're going to have manuscript pitches. We've got manuscript critiques with most of our faculty and lots of other goodies. So see you there. Now, as always, please write more light into your life.